Good day. Maybe you're one of those people who've enjoyed a cruise to Alaska during the summertime. But would you want to live there during the wintertime? You know, it gets so cold and it's dark all day and there's nothing growing during the wintertime. Well, some people actually like wintertime. Not me, because I'm from Southern California, but my brother-in-law in Minnesota, well, he likes winter. Of course, in Minnesota, they might have frostbite of the brain, but they like it because they can go skating, hunting, they can go skiing during the winter time. You know, each season of life has positive things about it if you know where to look. Well, I think one of the best verses in the Bible for teaching us how to grow old talks about different seasons of life. And it's useful to know the seasons of life that you're in order to most benefit from them and make your contribution. The key verse for how to grow old is Ecclesiastes 3, about the seasons. There's a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and also a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Now, this is speaking of some literal things, people, animals actually dying, but you can also see it in a figurative sense. You know, building relationships, not just buildings, giving up a desire or a dream, ending a business. Now, in each of these things, there's a contrast. And we'd say, on one hand, there's bad things, you know, uprooting, tearing down, dying. And we'd see the other half as the positive half, you know, building, laughing, enjoying, being born. And we, if we had our druthers, probably want to eliminate all the bad and just have the good. But that misses the point of the seasons and the important thing the seasons bring to us. Now, there are seasons of life, seasons of dying, whether it's a friend, a family member, whether it's a dog or the death of a job, or on the other hand, the birth of a new job or a new person in the family. There's uprooting, which could be uprooting plants in the backyard, or it could be uprooting yourself or a friend as you move to another location. There's weeping, which could follow a sickness or a disability or pain or loss of any kind, or laughing, having a gain, especially when you didn't expect, or being healed. These are the seasons of life, and they're true in our personal lives. It's also true in our family lives. There are also seasons in our church or faith life. Now, some of these seasons are short and temporary, just for the moment. And then they get fixed or reversed, or we recover from them or replace it with something new. But other of these seasons are long seasons, which will last for years or decades or maybe nearly a whole life. You might have a chronic pain or chronic illness, a death that ends a relationship, an unfulfilled dream, or a loss. These are the bigger problems because these seasons last a long time and affect us. It feels like forever. Also, these are worse, the bad seasons, if they're compounded, more than one together. You can be in different seasons at the same time, maybe in an ongoing season of age and disability, but punctuated by short seasons, an illness that lasts just for a while, or maybe a gift that perks you up. Now, it's good to know the season you're in, whether it's an ongoing season or a temporary or short-time season, so that you can adjust for that. And that's especially true as we grow older, to know the season of life we're in and to be able to adjust to that. You know, it's good to know the season you're in. In Southern California, sometimes it's hard to tell the season you're in. You know, here's a picture of a night sky in the city. It's like you can't see the stars, so how can you use the stars to tell the season you're in? And it seems like summer all year long in Southern California, and it never snows, and there's always something green and growing and flowering and bearing fruit. Okay, So we also need to recognize the season we're in, emotionally, personally, the season in our family, the season of our age, so that we can adapt to that. We can't lose a sense of that season. Sometimes seasons come and go. Now, for my part, sometimes I'll find myself listless or without energy. But then I'll remind myself, okay, this is a sign that you're in a season. What season are you in? And usually in that kind of mood, it means that I have a loss. And it might be a permanent loss, like a death in the family, or it might be just a temporary loss. But in either case, I need to recognize that season and adjust to it and adapt to it to understand how that affects me and other people, and then to adjust to it. Now, you might say our whole lifetime is a cycle of seasons. There's the early season, probably the first 2/3 of life, the spring and summer years, in which we're growing up, learning new things, finding exciting things in the world. We're adding things to our lives. We might add a husband or a wife. We might add children, a house, a nicer house, a new job. We'll be building a career. Spring and summer times of life are marked by a lot of additions, and they're kind of fun. But then the last third of life is fall and winter, in which there's a lot more loss than there is gain, generally speaking. So you hit your middle years, and then the children are kind of leaving you in their minds and then leaving home. In the middle years, you might hit the peak of your profession, but then plateau after that. And then as the years go on, you have more illnesses, more chronic conditions, more arthritis that never goes away. You might actually have ends of times in which you end a job, or you end a relationship. Loved ones die. Peers die. Even people younger than you die. You have an empty nest. You downsize. And so the later years, the season of winter, has more losses than gains. And this is what makes growing old difficult. The winter time of life has more losses than gains. Just as in nature, winter, you lose flowers, you lose greenery, you lose plants, you lose daylight, and you need to adjust to that. Oh yeah, there's little breaks in that. You might have Indian summer, warm days during winter. You might have flowers in the snow, or conversely, you might have snow in May. But those seasons of life are the ones that last. Okay, so when we're in our old age, that's a season of life like winter. We need to recognize we're in winter and then make the adjustment that's necessary to do that. Now, in the winter time of life, in our later years, these are hard. Our children have grown up and moved away. Maybe they don't want our input in their lives anymore, or maybe there's a rift that's developed, or rifts that develop between our adult children. We'll be losing a job, having more chronic pains and illnesses. We have less energy, less ability, more disability through arthritis or whatever. We lose friends to death, and young people. We become more alone, probably lonely as well, have less affirmation from career and from child raising and so forth. And unlike the younger seasons of life, very often these losses you do not recover from. So old age, the winter of life, is much harder as a season. Okay, so is this a dead end? Or is old age a destination? You can look at that either way. Now, we'd like to see that as not just a dead end, but as a destination. That there is good in this season. There's purpose and meaning in this winter season. If you learn how to grow old, it can be a positive thing for you. If you see that positive thing. Okay, one of the things in Ecclesiastes it talks about is uprooting. What good is there in uprooting? You're losing a plant or losing a fruit tree. What good is there? Well, it could be bad, but a gardener will probably uproot for a good reason. A plant might be diseased, or it might be weak, or maybe it's in the wrong place, or it no longer bears fruit. And so the uprooting becomes planting something new in its place. So we need to, in the later years of our life, see the positive parts of this season and adapt to it, and then it will be productive for us. And so you do have a loss or uprooting. You might become a widow, or you might have an empty nest. And if you see just that loss, you've missed something, because a gain comes with it. For instance, freedom that comes with those things. And so you need to know what season you're in, and also find the task of the season you're in. Now, some of the things I mentioned before, like dying, are things that happen to us. But other things in Ecclesiastes 3, are things we do, tasks we have. Listen, Ecclesiastes 3 goes on. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather. A time to embrace and a time to refrain. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. God has made everything beautiful in its time. So we need to find the season we're in and then find the task for that season. Now, sometimes these are easy tasks, building, planting. Other times the tasks are hard. Uprooting, knocking down, death, distancing yourself, giving up, giving away. These are hard tasks for those seasons, but both the easy tasks and the hard tasks are both important. There might be one more than other in a season, but it's important we do both. You can find those, and you'll find an opportunity in every season if you look. And it's good to talk to other old people as well to find out what good things they've found, what opportunities they've found in the winter season they're in. There are opportunities. Now, as you get older, one of the hard things about it is that you find that you can't give or do as much as you used to, and you need to ask for help more often. This is difficult, especially with those of us who have had servant lifestyles and servant attitudes. And so we need to adapt how we do those things. We can still give, but we need to give in different ways and perhaps to a different degree. So this takes two things. It takes first accepting. I need to accept. I'm in winter now. I can't do what I used to be able to do. I'm more limited than I used to be. But that's okay because it's winter. Just as in the season of winter, you'd go out and you'd say, well, I can't plant now because it's below freezing. I can't go to the beach now. I'd get frostbite. And you need to accept that's winter right now as an older person. I'm in the winter of my life, but that's all right. I can accept that. Okay, but then the second part, after accepting, there's adapting, so that we can adapt to that season of life and decide how we can use this for the best, what opportunities they are in old age we didn't have before, so that we can learn how to grow old. And we can use the wisdom of old age, by the way, in order to accept and to adapt. Okay, I'd like to think about pro athletes, and here's one you can look at. Who is it, by the way? What you notice about this athlete is he's got gray hair. Now that's unusual in athletics because in professional athletes, they find that as they get older, they slow down, injuries accumulate, they don't have quite the speed they used to or stamina or energy. Now for a while though, they can adapt to that by playing smarter. Okay, so how do they do that? By the way, baseball fans will know this is Phil Niekro, and gray hair is the real thing. He played in the professional leagues until he was age 48. Now this is just amazing because in Major League Baseball, the average age of teams is 28. So he's almost double the age. In fact, he is more than double the age of some of the people he was playing with. How could he play so long? Well, he learned a trick of old age. Instead of throwing as fast as he could before, he learned to throw the knuckleball. And this is what enabled him to play until he was 48, as some other players also had. He even won 121 games after age 40. This is an amazing thing. Likewise, as older people, we can find opportunities, we can find ways of giving, of serving, of being productive in spite of old age, if we go about it in wise ways. We can find ways to give, to love, to serve in winter. Now, the later seasons of life, the sad seasons, whether they're ongoing or temporary, and the change of seasons are stressful. And this is why the Bible talks so much about peace. It says, "The peace of God that passes all understanding, keep your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." He came as Savior to redeem us from all kinds of losses, from the loss of sin and death and the devil, and also from the losses we face in living life and especially in old age. The peace of God that passes all understanding. And this contributes to an important characteristic we want as we get older, and that's contentment. Contentment or satisfaction is a kind of happiness, but it's a little more subdued maybe. Godliness with contentment is great gain, Paul said. Having food and clothing, let's be content. He said, in his later years, I've learned to be content, no matter what the circumstance or what state I'm in. Okay, we move towards contentment when we recognize our blessings, when we rejoice with others when they're blessed in ways we aren't. We move towards contentment when we give thanks for what we have. An important part of this is also avoiding envy. Especially as we grow older, we see that we have losses and we see other people who have the things we've lost. It might be that we don't have a husband or wife anymore. We become widowed or divorced. Or it might be we don't have grandchildren. If that's what we look at, we may look at other people who have those things and feel self-pity instead and envy instead. Not realizing that we have things that that person doesn't have. You know, we might not have a spouse, but we have a kind of freedom we wouldn't have otherwise. We might not have grandchildren, but we might have close friends the other person doesn't have. And so to avoid envy, we need to know the pleasures we have and not desire the pleasures the other person does, because every person has both pains and pleasures. And it's good that we dwell on the pleasures we have rather than on the pains we have. Well, Ecclesiastes 3 about the seasons ends up with a hope and a promise. Solomon says, I know that everything God does will endure forever. Everything God does will endure forever. Things he does in you and I, and things he does through you and I. Everything he does in each season of our lives will endure forever. For we'll have eternal life with Christ and bring with us people we've helped in the faith too. And we can increasingly do that as we find ways to serve, to be faithful to God, to love Him, regardless of the season in life. So that especially as we go older, we recognize the season in life we're in. And we recognize the opportunities in that, as well as recognize the losses. That we find the task for the season we're in. That we're able to accept the things, the circumstances we have, and adapt to make the best of those things as we recognize the seasons of life. So what season are you in now? Maybe you're in winter time. Are you closer to the fall equinox or closer to New Year's Eve? Well, in a way, it doesn't matter, because every season, every time of the season has its benefits and blessings as well as its difficulties, and each season has a task. I encourage you to take hold of that and make the best of those things. And God bless you as you do.